Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm still your host, alias to Guy. Well, we got a fair amount we're going to go over here today. We're going to start off with a real elbows up insult. I guess, well, personally, I'm not against this. They're going to raise a flag today for the July 4th celebrations down in the U.S. Now, this should set off a lot of the new liberals, the complete anti-America movement that Carney keeps on pushing, which is costing huge. I mean, the repercussions that it has had on Canada. Previous episodes, especially the U.S. ambassador, pointing out like just the ludicrousy of like taking liquor and stuff off the shelves, this whole anti-America hate rhetoric, and again, like I've done in previous episodes, Americans have been commenting on this, especially about the Eastern Canada, whereas Western Canada has actually kind of seen the opposite. There's been a lot more people coming up through to the West because they're really tired of the insanity and the hate that Americans are facing in the eastern provinces. So, elbows up, everybody. Elbows up. We're also going to dabble on, like I said, we're kind of going to try and cover a whole bunch of things here today. We're going to dabble into this immigration. A bombshell report came out that there's over 17,000 criminals that were allowed that actually had their slates cleaned, their criminal records cleaned, and have been brought into Canada. And this is only what we know of. We're going to kind of dabble a little bit on that whole immigration, and I'm going to make sure that I attach so that all of my viewers and subscribers have the ability to actually see these immigration levels. And we're going to do a quick breakdown per province. Then we're going to kind of tie into this huge deficit that we're gonna have. Another big bombshell was dropped like crazy. The PBO, CD Howe did report on it. We're gonna dabble on that as well. Automakers they're in Ottawa. They are choked. This whole EV mandate. Again, previous episodes, I was trying to get my voice out, trying to get the auto sector to be aware that voting Liberal or NDP was the demise of their own jobs. This is coming to fruition. It's happening. If you're in the auto sector, any part of that world, I don't care if you're assembling bearings in whatever, in some little factory in whatever, Ontario, and you voted Liberal, you voted your job away. Plain and simple, cut and dry, take it to the presses. And then we're gonna take on this interview, Lloyd Axworthy. Now, I was never really a big fan of him. He was a hum and a haw, old Liberal, but he kind of followed through the transition to the new Liberal Party with Trudeau. So he was always a little bit off his rocker. Like I said, I'm not a big fan, although he does have, in the old days, he had some type of, well, principled moralism, I guess you could call, albeit he was one of these guys who'll just do anything for power. He'll say or do anything. So he's kind of, he came down hard on Carney in this interview. I just want to go over this interview with you. And if we have time, we're going to talk about this police state. Harrison Faulkner, he's a young lad, really making waves in the media. I'm a fan of his. He's been taking on hardcore subjects, a lot like what I do. We get censored hardcore, people, because we don't want to babyfoot around. Say give childish words to serious words. Like, there's certain things. Obviously, I'm not gonna use I use the T word instead of ism, that type of thing. But he's been dealing on a lot of hardcore issues. He does very deep dives, lots of information, and he has just a savvy way of doing interviews. And like I said, I'm a big fan, and if we have time at the end of this, we're going to dabble onto his interview as well. So let's just get started with elbows up, everybody. Elbows up. So, City of Ottawa to raise the U.S. flag to celebrate Independence Day despite trade tensions. The city's flag protocol states that the flag of every country has diplomatic relations with that Canada has diplomatic relationships with will be raised on their national holidays. So yes, it's up, it's flying in the air. Ottawa, Canada, well, Western Canada has lost all respect for Ottawa after the Freedom Convoy. That ended, and it's too bad that there's a lot of great people in Ottawa who were part of the Freedom Convoy who just loved what they were doing, cleaning the streets, the garbage, feeding the poor. The crime rate, everything went down, and the insane leftists are still using this, and there's still articles coming up about how Canada has reclaimed its flag. Like the insanity, just the insanity of it all. But anyways, let the leftists lose it, driving by, seeing this American flag wave so proudly in the air. So let's just get into this. We're going to start off with this CTV morning, and then we're going to dive deeper into this immigration with criminals. It's just, you can't make this stuff up, only in our broken country.
We're learning of government figures that show thousands of foreigners' criminal convictions have been forgiven, allowing them to enter the country through work and study visas, permanent residency, or visitors. Well, from 2013 to 2024, more than 17,000 had their criminal convictions forgiven. This raises some questions about why the federal government chose to do so and what that means. So here with a closer look at this is Chantal Deloge. She's an immigration and refugee lawyer and regular guest of this program. Good to have you back.
Thank you very much.
So explain, first of all, if people hear the term forgiven, it is very different than a pardon. Explain why forgiven is used in this context.
Yeah, well, what that means is that immigration, once you're declared rehabilitated, that's the term, they overlook the legal consequences of that for purposes of entry to Canada. So your record is still there. The officers will still know about it. It forms part of your background. It's not erased, but it means that you become admissible to Canada.
And part of the concern about this, raised both by the opposition and by other critics, is that there's no transparency for Canadian citizens to know what these crimes were. Because in some countries, for example, homosexuality is illegal. If you've been charged and convicted in a country, we would forgive that here in this country.
Right.
So the concern around transparency is the big discussion that's happening now. Why would that be something not released?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, they would have those statistics. I mean, I would suspect that, first of all, there's a wide variety of infractions. These are not only crimes, by the way. It's any violation of federal law. I had to do an application like this one time for a guy who was convicted of hunting ducks out of season. And that was
shows up as a crime or an offense.
Yes, that's right. And he actually had to be declared rehabilitated in order to be able to come back to Canada again. And the vast majority of these offenses are pretty minor. I mean, when you hear these terms like foreign criminals, it sounds very scary. But in fact, usually it's Aunt Betty from Australia who had one too many mimosas at a brunch and got pulled over, or, you know, somebody that had possession of one joint or something like that. The vast majority are like that.
If they're not serious crimes, then why not allow transparency? This is propaganda. Even in the beginning, how she goes, oh, it's a few thousand people have been let in. And then, of course, this pacifist kind of, the enabling, it's just probably Aunt Betty smoking a doobie on the porch and got busted. The fact of the matter is there are criminals coming in, and there is zero transparency. The immigration system is broken in Canada. What was once one of the greatest attributes that Canada was recognized with all over the world was our immigration system. The way we vetted, the way that we picked and chose, it was admired around the world. Lots. I'm talking, well, as far as I could tell in my research, 30 some countries have based and have slowly been changing their systems over to the way that Canada's immigration system is done, especially since this mass immigration push by the global elites to flood countries in order to destroy them. And tons of countries are seeing this, and now they're doing kind of the Trumpian thing where they're just deporting them, and they're coming straight out. Wilder and a few other leaders have come right out, and they have said, we want them gone. We want all of them gone. And the elections are looking as though those are the parties that are going to take power. If, and again, I urge you to watch previous episodes because I've shown this, there are the liberal governments within those countries are trying everything to false allegations, false charges, surveillance on these parties. They're doing everything that the Democrats did to the Republicans. Piles of illegal acts within a democracy in order to stay in power, to keep pushing this just insanity of flooding democratic nations with immigrants. Like I said, we're going to dabble a little bit further into this, but let's just finish off with the propaganda.
What is then the process for more serious crimes if we're talking about assault, murder, grand theft?
Yeah. So the process is exactly the same, but it's a much more rigorous test and a much more rigorous screening. So what the government officer does is they balance off the severity of the crime with the evidence that this person has truly changed their life, is truly rehabilitated, and would not pose any risk to Canadians. So the more serious the offense, the less likely it would be that it would be granted.
And whose discretion is that up to?
It's up to the officer. And at the end of the day, they have to report back to their superiors as well. So it is quite a rigorous process. You really have to prove that this person has changed their ways.
This conversation also becomes a little louder when we're taking a look at what's happening south of the border, when we're seeing ICE arrests that happen around people with criminal convictions. So an immigration and refugee lawyer who recently spoke with the Globe and Mail says that people with criminal convictions facing deportation from the U.S. may try to come to Canada. So how much merit, first of all, does that claim hold?
It is quite possible that they would, but our inadmissibility laws around criminality are actually even stricter than they are in the States. A lot of people don't realize that. So the U.S. is more concerned with crimes that have some sort of depravity attached to them, or what they call crimes of moral turpitude, whereas ours is a much more black and white. Like if you have a conviction, it almost doesn't matter what it is. It will make you inadmissible if you're a foreign national. There are some exceptions, but they're rare.
The IRCC says that it looks at an applicant's current circumstances, the behavior, and the severity of the offense before granting them access. You used the term before about rehabilitation. They have to prove they've been rehabilitated. What does that mean? What's the proof there?
Yeah, so it's up to the person who's applying to prove it to the officer. So they can give what evidence they wish, but at minimum, they have to show that it's at least 5 years ago that they completed their sentence, that they satisfied all the aspects of it, and that they have had a clean record since that time. That's the minimum. But then you have things like character references, have they addressed the underlying root cause of the crime? If it was an addiction issue, have they received treatment for that? All of those kinds of things.
When you say that our admissibility laws around immigration are stricter than that of the U.S., can you give us a couple examples?
Yeah, well, for example, DUI. An impaired conviction for a Canadian going into the U.S. would generally not cause a problem at all. They would be able to have entry unless there was an aggravating factor around it. DUI coming inbound to Canada is extremely serious. You need special permits for it, even just to come in for a temporary period, and you need rehabilitation ultimately. And it will stay on your record for Canadian purposes forever until you apply to have it cleared.
Now, maybe at the border, but again, previous episodes, I showed one case in particular where a person came in through the immigration system and had a drinking problem and got caught. Not only once, not twice, not thrice, but like a pile of times. And he should have been deported the first time. Now, the court systems back then, They did a soft tactic, which, I'm all for with certain circumstances. There were pressures in that person's life, so that was all okay. And then years had gone by, and the person seemed to be doing well. and kind of fell off the radar, which is good. It seemed like, he was getting better. He was, trying to cut down on the drinking and obviously not drinking and driving. But then got caught, and then again got caught. And then it found out that he had actually, like, the system itself was trying to hide the fact that he was doing this on a regular basis. He's still in Canada. This has been going on for, I think it was 23 years. So our own rules within our country are weak. And especially in the last 10 years, have gone completely out of control. Especially with the soft on crime legislation that the Liberals have put in. And you got to remember, they did this on purpose. Fear, hate, and division. A divided country is easy to rule. And we just saw it in the last election. Unbelievable.
People hear that number, about 17,000 foreigners coming to Canada who have a criminal conviction, and some people feel that number's too high, or maybe there's not enough transparency. What's the bar for concern there?
Yeah, so I mean, there are so many people coming and going from Canada every year. If you look at that number compared to overall numbers, it's really a very small drop in the bucket. And
okay, I'm gonna end it there. Propaganda. One criminal is one criminal too many, especially if there is zero transparency. Zero. This is the socialist regime that is the new Liberal Party. They have built brick walls so that you cannot see what they're doing. This has gotta end. It's just out of control. Out of control.
I wanted to move on and talk about this bombshell report in the Globe and Mail. Thousands of foreigners' criminal convictions were forgiven by Ottawa over 11-year span, raising transparency concerns, written by Mary Wolfe in the Globe and Mail, published on July 2nd. This story is unbelievable, folks. It's like, just when you think that the immigration system wasn't bad enough under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, you learn about this and it just absolutely makes your blood boil. So
yeah, especially since this all started when Trudeau took power. See, that's the kicker, and that's what the propaganda is trying not to bring up. This is all policies brought in by the new Liberal Party. This was what was deemed unacceptable for generations before. You don't bring criminals in. And if you do, the governments had transparency. So you would find out. That's why they didn't bring criminals in. This is the reality of it. Thank you, Candace, for stating it like it is.
Just read from this Globe and Mail report. More than 17,500 foreigners had their criminal convictions forgiven by the Immigration Department over the last 11 years, removing a bar to coming to Canada. Federal government figures show disclosure has raised transparency concerns about the type of offense they committed. Foreigners are, in general, inadmissible to Canada if they've been convicted of an act that is considered a criminal offense in this country. But Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada, it used to be called CIC when I worked there, it's now called IRCC, has the power to grant an exception if 5 years have lapsed since a person was convicted or finished their sentence. Okay, so if you've been 5 years without a criminal record, the department can make an exception, but it has to be a one-time exemption. They actually have to look at what your crime was. Government figures show that in the 11 years up to and including 2024, 17,600 people convicted of criminal offenses abroad were considered rehabilitated by the IRCC. This meant that they were able to apply to Canada either through work or visa studies as permanent residents or visitors. IRCC has not, however, released a breakdown of the kind of criminal offense that were forgiven. It said in a statement to the Globe and Mail that the immigration minister would be involved in decisions relating to the most serious offenses. Last year, 1,390 people had their criminal convictions forgiven by IRCC, while 105 applicants were refused. In 2023, 1,500 people were considered to have been rehabilitated, while 70 applicants were rejected. Conservative Immigration Minister Michelle Rempel-Garner said there needs to be more transparency about the type of convictions being forgiven and the circumstances of each case if the public is going to have any confidence in the immigration system's vetting process. I'm sorry, I don't speak for all the public, but I know a lot of people do not have confidence in the system. When you see a story like this, heck, even before you see a story like this, when you look at what's happening in our country with the break and enters, with the home invasions, with the car thieves, with criminals running rampant all over our country, this didn't happen 10 years ago, right? And so we know that the government just let a whole bunch of criminals into our country, and now it is being confirmed. I don't know how they can ever regain that confidence in our immigration system. I'll continue to read. There have been questions about the adequacy of vetting of many classes of people entering Canada, she said, adding that she may raise the issue at the Commons Immigration Committee when Parliament resumes from its summer break. Foreigners applying to have their crimes forgiven must show that they are unlikely to take part in future criminal acts. According to IRCC, the department considers the number of offenses and circumstances and seriousness of each one, IRCC said, as well as the applicant's behavior since the crime was committed. IRCC said it also looks at the support they receive in the community as well as the applicant's current circumstances. The decision to approve or refuse an application for rehabilitation for less serious offenses is generally made by an RSCC official with the appropriate delegated authority, while decisions for more serious offenses are made by the immigration minister, said the spokeswoman Nancy Karen. Okay, this is unbelievable. So 17,000 criminals in Canada. The government just said, hey, don't worry about the criminal record. Let's just let them through. Don't worry about it. Don't look at it. They won't even give us a breakdown. Look, I am open to admitting that, hey, if someone was convicted of a crime, say like a political crime, say they're a political criminal in China, and they come to Canada and Canada says, look, we don't consider that to be a real crime. That's BS. We're going to forgive that crime. I'm here for that. I'm okay with that. That's okay. That's something that we should be doing. But that's not what's happening here. And the fact that the minister won't even say so, that they won't have any transparency, that they won't let you know how many of these people were actually violent criminals, victims, perpetrators of crimes where there are victims, like sexual assault, aggravated assault. So like we don't even know. We don't know. The fact that the ministry had to look at each individual case, and the minister, I highly doubt that they looked at 17,000 cases. I just don't believe that. And so the idea that they just kind of like rubber stamped everyone, this is unbelievable. This is scary. This is dangerous. This is just reason number 10,000 why the Trudeau government was absolutely reckless when it came to immigration. They absolutely destroyed the system and our country. Let me just read a little bit more.
She's absolutely right, and I agree. That's why I'm playing. Instead of me going over the document, I'm letting Candace do it. Again, another journalist that I have just the utmost respect for. She is reading it and discussing it in the exact same way that I did. So while I was going over these reports and the different news agencies that had printed this out, I was playing some of the different people reporting on it, and of course, like I had her playing, and I'm just like, that's exactly how I felt. It's not that certain people's crimes in another country wouldn't be a crime here. That's not the problem. Obviously, if you went against the CCP and Xi Jinping was like, "Waha, you're going to jail," that I can understand that. But we need the transparency to be able to see this. We need committees to be able to look at what this liberal regime is doing and saying, "Oh, yeah, that totally makes sense for sure." But they're not doing that. And after seeing how they have flooded our country, and where a majority of these people are coming from unvetted, you have to sit back and go, well, what else don't we know? Again, this is all about transparency. You need it in order to have a functioning democracy. You in order to keep the rule of law, in order to actually do your job and fulfill good governance, you have to have that openness. The word transparency in Canada has been flushed down the toilet. There is zero transparency. That is one of the reasons I keep saying the new Liberals are a fascist regime, because this is what they do. Just like the trade negotiations going on with Carney. He's doing things without Parliament. Okay, so fine, you drop the digital sales tax. That's great. Personally, I was against it the whole time. But how about Parliament? Shouldn't all of Parliament have a say in actually removing the legislation? If we were in such an emergency, like Carney said, and the mainstream media kept pushing to get him elected, why isn't Parliament running? If Canada was under such an existential threat, where's Parliament? Again, zero transparency. So the immigration is only one more factor, and it's just probably the largest destructive thing that the Liberal Party is doing to our nation. This is huge. Not enough people are talking about it. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Let's let Candace go. Again, great journalist.
From this Globe Mail piece, to protect Canadians and in the interest of transparency, IRCC should be open about the type of convictions that have been forgiven, said Richard Curlin, immigration lawyer based in Vancouver. In many cases, particularly convictions in authoritarian states for political offenses, rehabilitating a person is justified, he said. Some crimes are minor, he added, and committed decades ago by people who have never reoffended. But, he said, applicants convicted of crimes against the person, including sex offenses and domestic violence, should face a higher level of scrutiny. If they enter Canada and cannot be removed for a considerable period of time, people could be at risk. The issue is highly relevant, he said, with people with criminal convictions facing deportations from the United States. They may seek coming to Canada. Yeah, no doubt. They read this story in the Globe and Mail yesterday and said, hey, I may be part of Tren de Aragua or some other immigrant gang group in the United States. Why would I leave and get deported back to my country when I just go to Canada? They'll probably just forgive my criminal record anyway. This is just another reason why Canada, it's just not a serious country. Like, a serious country doesn't do this kind of thing. A serious country removes people who are criminals, or hey, how about not letting them in the first place, bringing in more screening, bringing back more checks on people, stop them from coming in the first place. It is absolutely outrageous. Okay, I want to jump to a special interview that I did.
Yeah, I totally agree with what she's saying. Totally agree. Now, I'm going to attach these documents that my obviously you all can go over. A lot of it, this is through Statista. It's the Immigration in Canada. It's Statistics and Facts. It deals with some of the immigration laws, the employment and education, origins, and it gives you a bunch of different statistics that you can go through. Now, in these statistics, you can check this out, okay? So you could see literally where Trudeau took over, which right here, the numbers started to skyrocket. And as they were bringing in more and more people, they took advantage of when all the other countries had shut down during COVID, we were still bringing immigrants in. They didn't stop. Everybody else stopped. So while you were having to go and download your Arrive Scam app, and while you were forced to not be able to leave your house, you were going to lose your job if you didn't take the jab, all of the rest of these barbaric, just insane dictatorship rules, they were bringing in hundreds and hundreds of thousands of immigrants. And then it spiked because they're trying to meet the agenda from the global cabal. They're trying to flood Canada. This is the Century Initiative. These people are lunatics. They don't care about you. They don't care about our country. All they care about is their own big business, their investment. They want more peons. They want more peasants. Then by doing this, they drive wages down. They create the fear, hate, and division. They stay in power, which we're seeing. And all of this doesn't make any individual wealthier in any way, but it does make the corporations wealthier, which we've seen. And again, previous episodes, how I show you the largest division of transfer of wealth has happened during this Liberal 10 years. It's done on purpose, people. It's on purpose. Now, when a person digs in a little wee bit deeper, you start to see the immigration per province. This is 6 months in. This was, I believe, done at the end of June. Now, I broke these numbers down, and you're going to be a little bit surprised on this. So when you're going through all of these numbers, in BC, they brought in 1 migrant to every 78. In Alberta, 1 to every 70. In Saskatchewan, 1 to every 50 residents. In Manitoba, 1 to every 59 residents. In Ontario, 1 to every 73 residents. In Quebec, 1 to every 156 residents. And again, previous episodes, this is why their housing market, even though it's hurting, hasn't seen the huge rise that the rest of Canada has seen. And by the way, that bubble is ready to burst. New Brunswick, 1 to every 57 residents. Nova Scotia, 1 to every 73 residents. Newfoundland and Labrador, 1 to every 102 residents. PEI, 1 to every 43 residents. Now, if you follow and actually work these out, it sure looks a lot like they are purposely flooding conservative provinces. Now, the only one that doesn't necessarily fall into that is Alberta. And I think the reason behind that, and I'm going to do a bunch of research on that, is because Alberta has the largest internal so Canadian citizens, there are record numbers of Canadian citizens moving to Alberta. They don't count as immigrants. And I think this is why, because of the way their population is booming, the actual federal government hasn't been able to force the new immigrants in so successfully like they have a lot of the other conservative provinces. That part is theory with Alberta. Like I said, I got to do some research. It's a little hard to find a lot of these things, but I will be diving into it. That's why I started the channel. Sorry, so sorry, just the facts. So again, another chart here, and you can see this is where Trudeau took power. This is the number of permanent residents in Canada. Now, yes, during the COVID, you do see this fall, but if you notice, they were still bringing in a lot of immigrants. They didn't stop. And a lot of countries around the world were looking at Canada going, whoa, what the heck are you doing? And then, of course, we're back to the Century Initiative and growing. And, of course, the mainstream likes to put out there how, but they cut their immigration numbers due to pressure. Well, if you were bringing in, on an average, like back here, somewhere around 257,000, and then you doubled it, or, went up to, say, what are they at here? So 483,000. And then they say, we're reducing it. We're going back. We're going to go back. Go back to what? They only cut back 30 or 80,000 immigrants. So they're still superseding all the numbers prior. So all of it is a lie. And propaganda pushes this out, saying, no, they've tapered their numbers back down again. No, they haven't. Sorry, my phone's going off. There must be something happening. I'll check that out here while I'm running another video. And again, I'll post another article here as well from the Migration Policy Institute for your reading pleasure. It kind of goes over it, especially how we were recognized at one time for our immigration policy and how it's completely gone off the charts. It's out of control. So this is a great little story. This is only one of thousands that we know about that are happening. Leave it to Rebel News to dig deep And Sheila Gunn Reid, gotta love the gun, throws it out there. Thank you, Sheila.
I'm wondering why nobody ever looks into the abuse of the student worker visas or temporary foreign worker programs. I have personally seen how the abuse takes place. In my case, it's people from India. They are paying the owner of a business $35,000 in some cases cash into his pocket. In exchange, he employs them as temporary foreign workers for 2 years. In one case, after 2 years, the worker does not get her permanent residency. So he was going to charge her another $35,000. Fortunately or unfortunately, depends on how you look at it. The program she came through was no longer available. I've seen him do this to multiple people, and when he employs them, he abuses them. If they make mistakes, he makes them pay the money back. The business is a fast food restaurant. He has 5 of them. Just to clarify, if they make the food wrong or the order, they hand notice incorrect, he makes the employee pay him the money for the product. If they don't close properly at night, he makes them come in and fix whatever issues in the morning, and of course none of this is paid for. The extra hours is not covered. Why would he ever hire a Canadian when he can make thousands and thousands of dollars by bringing in a foreign worker? You never see the story in the papers. And then he tells me not to read the rest of it on air, and I'm not gonna. But yeah, when you have a temporary foreign worker system,
I know exactly how she feels. I get a lot of emails and a lot of different conversations, and I want to just thank everybody, especially on the last episode. What a great debate we had on this milk industry. I got the best subscribers. I really do. I like the viewers I got. They're amazing. And a lot of the emails. And I want to thank you guys. I do. I try to read every single comment. I may not reply myself to every single one. I may just throw a like or the little heart on it. Sometimes I will kind of get involved into it. I try to comment. I try to be part, and I try to give feedback. And a lot of the emails that I get as well, I got a few huge fans out there. They even send me little clips to other videos and stuff that obviously deal with episodes that either I have talked about or episodes that they'd like me to do in the future. Keep up the good work. I do. I check them all out. I go through those videos last thing at the day. I sit down and I go through all of the videos that you guys send me. Of course, I have to do a lot of fact checking and verifying as well, but for the most part, my fan base, sorry, just the truth, just the facts. They send me great videos. They're factual, they're bang on the money, and I will be using them. In fact, I have used some of them in prior videos. So again, I just want to thank everybody. But now back to like what Sheila said, a lot of the times I can't actually divulge a lot of the material that I get sent to me. I do have a couple people who have come out. I can't confirm whether or not they work where they say they work, so I haven't used some of that material. But once, hopefully, I build a better repertoire and a trust level with them, obviously as my channel grows and they see that I do not dox people. I won't dox people. I just refuse to. Even going out and actually doing like crowds and stuff, I get out, I do a lot of different things. I don't do the actual recording. I don't want other people being part of something where, first of all, I could be liable, but second of all, I don't want people to feel incriminated or to be hated upon and doxxed if somebody from a loony part somewhere else all of a sudden says, that's this person, look at this, blah, 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 and there's a chance you could lose your job. That's the society we live in today. How horrible it really is. So Sheila protecting her source, totally understand, but still putting the story out there. And obviously, she has already built up the repertoire where he wanted this to be put on, and she knows who this person is, so she can verify that this is really happening. This is like so crucial. It is a majorly important part to being factual in order to get the truth out there. And this is why I respect so many of these journalists, especially like Rebel and Juno, Countersignal. There's so many great journalists out there. Make sure that you follow and like them, you guys. We all need everybody's support, so make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. It helps us grow the channel. And slowly, we are digging away, we are undermining, and we will see the collapse of the propaganda media. But we all need your help to do it. Continue there, Mrs. Gunn.
That incentivizes people to bring in low unskilled workers and employ them over Canadian students or Canadians. It does a couple things. It makes it rife for abuse, and it drives the average cost of wages down for everybody.
Everybody.
It makes people vulnerable. And let's not even talk about bringing in temporary foreign workers to do jobs that Canadian high school kids used to do. The left tells me they're against slavery, but this sure sounds like slavery to me. And then there's the abuse on the other side. So you come in as a temporary foreign worker, you get here, you claim refugee status. And then now you're in the refugee queue. And you've disappeared. And then maybe you'll marry a Canadian while you're here. And so all of a sudden you found your way into our country and you're not going home. And we don't have housing for anybody that's already here. We don't have jobs for anybody that's already here. We don't have healthcare for people who are already here. We don't have infrastructure like roads. Have you been on the 401 lately? For people who are already here. We just can't bear the cost. We just can't.
She's absolutely right. We can't bear the cost. Sheila Gunn saying it as it is. And these are all facts. Everything she said, this is all facts. Our entire system is collapsing right in front of our eyes. And this is because of immigration. Like I said, this is the number one factor that is destroying our country. You add that to all of the horrible legislation that they put in, it's just, we're not a serious country. The voters they're not seeing the truth. We are ruled by propaganda. And it's got to end. It's just got to end. And the only way to do it is to get independent voices out there. So I'm going to attach this as well. This is from the actual Statistics Canada population estimates from July 1st by census of all of the different cities, areas, jurisdictions within Canada. It's another one to go through because it really shows you the increases of population. And if you go through this, you will see what I was saying, how it sure seems like anybody who votes, conservative or is a swing area is getting flooded with immigration. Now, this is a great article from the Toronto Sun. Canada's immigration system must put national security ahead of applicants, says this expert. We need to get back to a system that's sane. We need to get back to a system that's secure, said Toronto immigration lawyer Sergio Carneys. Now, he goes on and he just slams the system, and he's absolutely correct. Once again, our system is broken. That's among many issues experts say need to change as Canada wrestles with what they say is decades of ineffective and damaging immigration policy as the country deals with increased global security threats from bad actors. We need to get back to a system that's sane. We need to get back to a system that's secure, Toronto immigration lawyer Sergio Carneys of Carneys Immigration Law told the Toronto Sun. Security for Canadians and Canadian residents should be the first priority, not the last. Security should be first, and the applicant's application should be second. As Iran's Islamic theocratic regime staggers under Israeli and American attempts to dismantle the terrorist state's nuclear weapons program, reports of official members and the regime's Islamic Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC, taking refuge in Canada are growing. And this is a fact. These people are hiding in Canada. And they freely just come and go. And they've been doing this. And the Conservatives have been trying so hard. Open it up the books. Let's see who's in the country. Let's actually put some people's names on this foreign agent registry. So after years of push, the Liberals finally conceded and went, okay, we're going to create this foreign registry. There's 0 names on it. Why? Because the Liberal Party is infiltrated, not only from China. Again, previous episodes. This party is bought and paid for And they're ruling our country and driving it into the ground. The new post-national state, it's here. It's upon us. Again, I attach everything here down in the description below. So for all those new viewers that are watching me, any of my videos, all of my videos, you will find all of the information posted in the description. I mean, sorry, so sorry, just the truth, just the facts. Now, you think the deficit was bad before. The new numbers are coming out. And while this existential threat is upon us and Parliament is closed, the government just keeps going in asking for more money, and they just got another $8 billion passed through the Senate. The Senate is all puppets. They're just the printing press for the Liberal government. They're, 90% of them were all appointed by Trudeau and his weirdo class of socialists. So who's gonna bring forward the bills at the end of this fiscal year? And what are they gonna do? Are they gonna lie again? I mean, we've already found out that even the $62 billion that they supposedly had, that Christia, finally put her hands up and goes, this is too much, I don't want to do this anymore, was a lie. It was actually closer to $74 billion. And we still haven't seen the books because the Liberals won the election again. So they just keep covering crap up. We need politicians to go to jail. We need to remove this government. We need serious investigations brought in, policing right in, full transparency so all Canadians can see it, and actually start going after where all this money is going.
Estimated that the deficit this year, the federal deficit, would be close to $47 billion. Now that seemed like an improvement. It's bad, but it seemed like an improvement over the $62 billion that the Liberals racked up in the last year that Justin Trudeau was the Prime Minister. And everybody was saying, with Mark Carney, he's such a great financial brain. He was the former governor of the Bank of Canada, the former governor of the Bank of England. Things are going to get better. Well, we have evidence this week from the C.D. Howe Institute in Toronto that the federal deficit this year will be closer to $86 billion.
$86 billion, people. The banker, elbows up, still hasn't given us a budget. Why? Because he's been helping the Trudeau government the entire time blow our tax dollars and try to remove our rights one legislative bill at a time. He is the general who's been hiding in the backgrounds. He knows the books. He also knows he can't show us the books. They need time to keep hiding money. They need time to keep implementing their agenda. 82 billion? Oh wait, it could be higher.
It may even top $90 billion, which would be twice what the Parliamentary Budget Officer said was the baseline. Now, the Parliamentary Budget Officer is not to blame here. His office said that is before all of the campaign promises. And the Liberals have made enormous campaign promises, particularly on housing and the military. Now, I'm all for spending more on the military, but you have to find some other cuts in the federal government. First of all, under Justin Trudeau, the Liberals grew the federal civil service by just about 40%, and they grew the cost of the civil service, the payroll of the civil service, by over 90%. They hired a lot more civil servants, and they paid everybody in the civil service a lot more money. There are some efficiencies to be made. There are some cuts that could be made in the federal civil service. That would help reduce the deficit. But the Carney government's not going to reduce any spending. And on the other end of the country, at the Fraser Institute in Vancouver, they estimated that under the Trudeau government, investment in Canadian business went down by 20% per worker. If you look at productivity numbers, I know this is all sounding very number heavy and economic theory, but if you look at Canada's productivity numbers, they're among the worst in the developed world. Among the 40 richest countries in the world, we have among the lowest per person, per capita productivity numbers.
Think about that. Lauren Gunter, man, this guy's amazing. The lowest productivity. And companies are, like I had said again previous episodes with lots of evidence to prove it, fleeing Canada. They were ready. When they saw that the Liberals were going to get decimated, they were at the borders. They were ready. They were like, finally, we can get back. We can, retake, and actually start doing some mining and some textiles, and we can start building businesses. And because we were known to be such incredible workers, and with all of the resources that we have, we should be a powerhouse. There was no reason in the world why we should even pay taxes with the amount of resources that we have, not only under our feet, but on the surface. And add that to the Canadian spirit and work ethic, we should be filthy rich. No, in 10 years, they have completely destroyed Canada.
That's bad. And it's gone down under the Liberals. The Fraser Institute estimates that $387 billion in investment was lost under the Trudeau government. That's almost $40 billion a year under the Trudeau government. And the Carney government's doing nothing to get it back. Oh, you say, but they passed Bill C-5. That's the thing that speeds up national interest projects. But it doesn't change the regulatory problems that caused the lack of investment in the first place.
Exactly. Carney is going to push through his agenda. He's purposely put those rules in. He was part of the consultation. He was the general ordering the party to tell them what to do. Put Bill C-69, 4851, and all the rest of these crazy, insane bills. And then what does he do? He just gives himself a bill so that the companies and businesses that he thinks are in our national interest can avoid those rules. But anybody else, nope, you have to abide by these insane rules. And guess what? They're not coming. In fact, more companies are setting to leave.
It simply allows the cabinet, by itself, without Parliament, to decide who gets exempted from those regulations, which projects will get extra government funding, who's going to get favored. It's a favoritism bill. That's all it is. And that's what makes most governments petty regimes.
And that's what we have, is a petty regime. I post the article here as well for your reading pleasure. You can go over what Lauren Gunter has pretty much just said. I want to dabble on this. We're going to be a little bit over an hour on this one because I still want to deal with this this discussion from Axworthy. But I've been warning, and in previous episodes before the election, the CEOs of the companies were already saying that they weren't building in Canada anymore because of the EV mandate. They were ready to transition and were trying to already transition down to the States. Obviously, they were in talks with the Trump administration, and a lot of the auto unions backed the Trump Republicans because they also know about the insanity that was being enforced upon the people through a fascist government. Only a fascist government would force you to do something against your will. We saw it with the Wuhan virus. That was already, I still think people should be in jail for what they did. And now we're seeing it with the EV mandate. Goodbye, auto sector.
Facing an uncertain future, automakers arrived at the Prime Minister's office with a clear objective.
We'll be discussing EV mandates, of course, as well as a range of other policies to make sure the sector succeeds.
Since spring, the big three North American auto manufacturers have asked Ottawa to repeal its electric vehicle mandate.
Well, the EV mandate itself is not sustainable. The targets that have been established cannot be met.
Those targets require 20% of new car sales to be emissions-free by next year, then 100% of all new vehicles by 2035.
We're saying we don't want your cars, in all due respect.
With Donald Trump threatening the Canadian auto industry, more damage may be on the way with his so-called Big Beautiful Budget Bill, which includes phasing out electric vehicle tax credits from the Biden era. And with the U.S. and Canadian auto industries so deeply intertwined, it adds pressure on Ottawa to follow suit and pull back on its support for EVs.
At a time when we're in a tariff battle with the United States, to really impact our auto sector in this way would be very detrimental. So for a number of reasons, we absolutely oppose the EV mandates in Canada.
Will you drop the EV?
The finance minister won't say if the government is willing to go there.
We're always going to be there to support the industry and our workers.
The prime minister has made it clear he wants to land a new trade deal with Trump by July 21st.
We're doing what's necessary in order to get the best deal for Canadians, and we get the best deal for Canadians, we'll agree to it.
If there's no agreement by that deadline, Carney told automakers he's prepared to impose countermeasures on the U.S., retaliatory tariffs that match the state of negotiations.
Right. Now, with an EV mandate in place, what do you think the car companies are going to do? Canada, you've already shot both your feet, and now you've turned the barrel up. This government has to go. We need this government to fall. This is absolute insanity. You don't get any more delusional than first trying to implement an EV mandate and then standing on a podium saying, "Oh, we're protecting the auto industry." Are you really? Unbelievable. These people have no idea. Okay, so power and politics. This is hilarious. Lloyd Axworthy, like I had discussed earlier, this guy's a bit of a wingnut. He's an old school liberal, but he's also, yeah. Anyways, just take a listen to this.
As talks drag on, Prime Minister Mark Carney's approach is drawing condemnation from a former Liberal Foreign Affairs Minister. In this Substack post, Lloyd Axworthy attacked Carney and other world leaders for capitulation to the U.S. president. Quote, "When do we stop pretending it's all part of some clever negotiating strategy that justifies bootlicking in hopes of tariff concessions?"
I agree with them 100% because that's exactly what's going on. Carney is groveling and bootlicking. Elbows up. Everything that all of the conservative voters in Canada knew was going to happen. He's a pretend. He's a pretender. He doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about Canada. All he cares about is his investment companies, them making billions of dollars. If he really cared and he was really a good guy, would he hide $5.3 billion from taxes? No. Would he be, building dams and flooding Indigenous people in third world countries off of their property for investors' dollars? No. Would he be burning the rainforest in order to grow palm trees, I mean? No. This man is horrible. He's horrible. And that's exactly what he's doing, is he's bootlicking. It's just disgusting to even watch.
Lloyd Axworthy.
We should have shovels in the ground already. Trump did. Trump's got shovels in the ground already. He's building pipelines. He's got oil projects. He's got rigs moving all over. All over. They're on it. Nuclear sites for power plants are already being surveyed out. I mean, and what has Canada done? This existential threat. What have we done? They took holidays. Parliament is shut down. There isn't a single project moving forward. We aren't getting any of our resources to any other countries. Nothing's going on. Unbelievable.
Thank you for making the
Bootlicking
time.
is right.
That term bootlicking, obviously it's a pretty visceral one. What do you think merits that?
I think the fact that it was an opportunity at G7 meetings, NATO meetings, to actually address some serious issues. I mean, the world is changing, we all know that. And rather than coming to the core of these issues, we end up sort of manufacturing mealy-mouthed communiques that say nothing. So issues, what's happening in Ukraine, Gaza, climate change, the whole kind of convulsion that's going on in terms of civilians being attacked around the world. And people expect their institutions to be serious. And what this was done, it was simply a way to try to create a kindergarten so that the child king wouldn't find himself sort of totally estranged.
Well, but I guess the question becomes, if indeed the consensus among the other world leaders at that table is don't upset the apple cart, what would you have them do? Because it's true that these topics, be it climate change, be it Ukraine, risk provoking a very powerful and unpredictable man. So what would be a better path to your mind?
Well, I think it should have started earlier. I mean, I think as soon as they had these so-called Sherpa procedures before these conferences, and everybody wants to draft something that tries to find an agreement. But sometimes you simply can't find an agreement. And with Donald Trump, it's impossible unless you play according to his rules and his standards. So I think that the obvious would have been to try to work around him, to simply say, you don't want to talk about roaring fires and intense droughts and starving kids in Africa, well, but we do. And that he leaves early anyway. I mean, he can't take more than 24 hours of dealing with his peers. So, you know, I'm not trying to be sort of sarcastic about it. I'm simply saying we're in such an important defining role right now in the world, and that I think Canadians in particular felt liberated in a way in the election. It was a chance to start thinking about how much more independence do we have as opposed to dependence. Mm-hmm. And I think since then we're finding that we're kind of falling back into the same old rut.
Let's dig into specific examples, because you do talk about some of these things in your post. You criticized Mark Carney for dropping the digital services tax to get the U.S. back to the negotiating table. Now, the Prime Minister said earlier this week this was something Canada was probably going to do anyway in the course of the negotiations. It is a Justin Trudeau-era policy, but yes, one that Mark Carney has moved forward with. Do you think it would have been worth letting these negotiations that are so critical to Canada's economy end over the digital services tax?
Well, Catherine, if it comes to negotiating, you don't give away one of your cards. Mm-hmm. I mean, what do we get in return?
Back to the, well, we don't, I should say we don't know. In fact, we don't actually
know. We don't know.
Yeah.
But I think what is happening is that, I mean, I go back to 2018 mm-hmm. when Trump introduced aluminum and steel tariffs, and we retaliated. We got back. I mean, we put all kinds of constraints on about $16 billion worth of export. We're the largest export receiving country. We have some real muscle when we want to use it, but there seems to be just this tendency to sort of kind of tug the forelock and say, what can we do in front of this powerful guy? Well, you know, powerful people you can go around them and you can challenge them and you can contain them. I think that's a policy right now, is to contain the damage he does, so that we're not turning on to other generations the destruction that he's causing.
Now, my personal opinion on this is Carney's just trying to salvage his own investors, his own money, and the global cabal, because that is who Trump is going after. Again, previous episodes, I expose all of this. Carney doesn't care. He doesn't care about us. He doesn't care about the country. All he cares about is money. This is why he is, as Axworthy puts it, capitulating to the president. He's just trying to salvage what he can, because the U.S. is a huge economic powerhouse that a lot of his money, a lot of his investors are either invested in or his investors live. Watching his empire get the knees broke isn't to his interest. These are the things he's protecting. He doesn't care about Canada. Canada did, albeit completely ridiculous counter tariffs when the first Trump administration came in power, which really, I mean, the entire negotiations, we got slapped around pretty good. And then Trump knew. That's why when he won the second term, he came right after us. Because we're led by clowns. We're led by children who have no idea and no care about the country. All they care about is everybody within that Liberal Party's little private program that they want to do. And it just so happens that, you know, the entire party is involved in this green lunacy. So Carney, everybody knew. Everybody who voted against the Liberals knew this.
And so I just want to be crystal clear about this, because I think by and large Canadians, you know, said in the last election, yes, stand up to Donald Trump. But understanding what that looks like, you would be then advocating for, in this instance, no, we're going to stand our ground on digital services tax. We said this is an issue of fairness with U.S. tech giants. If you don't like it, you can take a hike. The negotiations are over. And by the way, here are our steel and aluminum tariffs. And that foregoes the chance of a deal in the next, let's say, 2 weeks.
I mean, putting the experts aside, what is wrong with the country deciding to tax some of the largest gougers of the Canadian finances, destroying our local community newspapers, pushing people out of business, and not tax them for it?
Now, this is where he falls off the ledge and exposes himself for the idiocracy that his mind works. We are so taxed. No, we have no big... These companies could be here in Canada. If they had affordable energy and a really, really low tax base, if we could beat the Americans, do you think they would be in the States or would they be here? We could have had our own Silicon Valley here. We have the energy, which is what they need. And what are we doing right now? Nothing. So where are they building? What? They're building down in the States. Trump is giving them everything they need. He's cutting the taxes, not only on the corporations, but on all of the people who work there. The largest tax cuts on the middle and lower class in the United States history. The big beautiful bill just passed. This is how you build an economy that no other country can compete with. Trump's doing it. What's Canada done? Nothing. We just keep adding more taxes. Oh, but 100,000 people got dental care, but it just so happens that it costs $1 billion. So for grandma to get her teeth fixed, and not that I don't. It's not that I don't feel that we should have somehow in place a way for us to help the impoverished, to help, well, we don't have a middle class, so, half of Canada's impoverished now. 25% of us are going to food banks. It's because of the policies. These corporations, how do you tax them? You're just showing them you're giving them even more grounds to not diversify into Canada in any way. You need to free up the space. You need to be an inviting country in order for these huge corporations to come into Canada. Like, look at Facebook. Go ahead and put a news article on there against policy. Who did that? That wasn't Americans. That was the Liberal Party, the axe-worthy party that did that. So who's hurting who? It's Canadian policy, Canadian socialist policy, fascist ideals that are destroying any chance of us ever having huge tech companies in Canada. This is where he falls into the loony bin.
I mean, since when? And I think what we've established with that is a precedent. What happens now if next week, all of a sudden, major droughts happen further in the States, and Donald Trump says, well, you know, I'd like a little part of that water you guys have, that sort of big sucking faucet up in north. I mean, you're setting precedents, and you're simply, every time you give in, you're simply providing another kind of incentive. I mean, when you have his press secretary coming up saying the Canadian Prime Minister caved, and it was a triumph for Donald Trump. Do you know who really reacts? And I got a lot of reaction because as you know, I took my education in the States. I know a lot of people. They said, why did you give that guy another win? We have to stop him.
I'll ask you about NATO as well. Only Spain opted out of the 5% spending target last week. You said in your post, other world leaders, quote, sat clapping like trained seals. Again, this is a situation where there does seem to be consensus among the world leaders, yes, perhaps driven by Donald Trump. The United States may not be there to protect Canada in the same way that they once were. So if there is this international consensus, and if there is an acknowledgement of a need to be more self-reliant, again, I guess the question becomes, what ought Canada to do if not go along with where so much of the world seems to be going?
And this is so true. Again, previous episodes, they literally clap like seals. All of these leaders who within their own parliament and were talking to newspapers, and they were slamming, they were trying to, with the help of their propaganda media, they thought for sure that the Democrats were going to win. They were part of that propaganda trying to hide the fact of the auto pen, that Biden from day one never had the intellectual stability left in him to lead the country. He was a puppet. He was doing everything the cabal wanted. They thought for sure, with the power of the media, that they were going to do what they did in the prior election that got Biden in through lies. All of these bullcrap stories. And when people started to get away from the propaganda and like, share, and subscribe a lot more independent media and start seeing the facts and truth, just the truth, they realized, holy crap, the media is full of crap. Now they're all in trouble. And so what do? They flipped. So all of a sudden, Orange Man bad to, oh, we love you, oh, we'll do whatever, oh yeah, we love you, you're the greatest leader. And Carney is like the biggest bootlicker of them all.
But that's what disturbed me about the meeting. We're using 5% as the goal in itself. Mm-hmm. You're not asking to do what? Mm-hmm. What impact does it have? I mean, we're not talking about improving our diplomacy or our development, which are equally important tools to deal with the world and with the threats and the risks we have. And in fact, one of the concerns that I feel, and others do, is that in order to meet that kind of commitment, we're going to have to cut back on the very things that have made Canada a distinctive and effective international player.
You in fact, in another post, talk about, you say, what else will we quietly surrender? Cultural industries, environmental standards, agricultural security, Arctic sovereignty. Wait till Stephen Miller whispers in the presidential ear that Canadian immigration policy supports diversity. And I guess I wondered reading that, why you are not giving Mark Carney the benefit of the doubt. You talk about the fact that we don't know what's going on in these negotiations, but you are assuming that things could go quite badly for this country.
Well, here's my point. I understand the pressures, but Prime Minister Carney and the government have to be very careful that what they do doesn't put us into sort of a straitjacket and present us, limit our ability to continue to make changes and innovate. And that really means that we have to ensure that the decisions are the right ones. I mean, I went through debates like the free trade debate in '88 where we argued, said this deal is not a good deal for Canada because we give away too much. Mm-hmm. We have no idea what's being negotiated. And that's one of the calls I've made is I think Mr. Carney and the government should make it very clear that they may negotiate a deal, but they should not agree to a deal. They have to bring it back to Parliament. Let's have a debate. Let's have an openness. Let's have committee hearings. Let Canadians get engaged so that we feel we know what's going on.
And
that he is right on. If this was such an existential threat, Parliament should be open. And how is he out there making these promises on legislation when he has a minority government? He's making decisions above, believe it or not, his pay grade. Parliament needs to be the ones to voice their opinions and vote on these decisions. They need to see what's going on behind these closed doors. Carney, he only cares about his investors. He doesn't care about you. The Liberal Party doesn't care about you.
Assurance that the Prime Minister has been trying to offer, that there won't be a deal signed if it's not. You will get a deal if it's in Canada's best interest. If it's not in Canada's best interest, there won't be a deal. That seems to not be of particular comfort to you.
Wait. Who chooses the best interest? He said, okay, we're going to test this in the parliamentary system. That's why we have a parliamentary system. You don't rely upon one man. I think we're all getting a little nervous about leaders who kind of speak ex cathedra. They're the only ones that have the truth. And Mr. Carney is a good man. He's an intelligent man, but is the only arbiter of what's in the best interest of Canada? Isn't it? I mean, we've seen in the legislation the government's brought forward the indifference to Indigenous rights. We've seen the difference to civil liberties issues. We've seen the difference to the rights of refugees. That's not in the best interest of Canada.
Because we have you here, I am going to take a little bit of a turn and just ask you in closing about something else that has been so important in your career. You were the driving force behind the Ottawa Treaty, the global convention to stop landmines. And you have written too.
All right. I'm going to attach with it this interview. I urge you to watch. This is Harrison Faulkner. I'm way over time here, so I'll attach it anyways. I urge you to watch it. This is a great interview where they're talking about this Bill C2. This bill allows way too much surveillance on Canadian citizens. This is against everything that it is to be Canada. This is another disgusting, socialist, fascist bill that scares the bejesus out of me, and it should you too. I will be breaking this bill down on future episodes. I apologize, you guys. I know I'm way over time. I'm at, an hour 17 now, so I apologize, but I just thought there was a lot that I wanted to kind of put forward. They all kind of seem to be pertaining, and it is what it is. So yes, I apologize. I went over. I want to thank you for watching. Obviously, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. If you are, punch that notification bell. It not only helps us grow the channel, but you won't miss any future episodes. And once again, thanks to all of my subscribers for all of your great comments. I love the conversations, especially reading and being able to be part of this open debate that this platform allows us to have, where we can actually type what we're thinking and have a discussion. And it helps me, it helps you, and it also kind of opens me up to, hey, yeah, they want this future episode, or they do this, or I love that, and I love being able to interact with you all. So thank you, and thanks for the emails. I love it. If you can donate to the channel, please donate. The web address or email address is right there, canadiancitizen@gmail.com. Check out the clothing line, you guys. I've got some great products. More and more will be released as we go on. I'm getting a lot of people saying that they kind of want more of my saying, so I actually did the sorry, just the facts. I got some t-shirts, sweaters, mugs, even some stickers, and I'll be doing a few more. Like I said, they'll be released probably in the next week or so. With this new digital format I'm running, it's really high quality, so they're making sure that they have the ability to press it off, or maybe I have to manipulate certain things within my digital software to make it easier for them. So anyways, until the next time, you've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, Alias Tagai. Stay informed.